Welcome to Talk OT to Me, the podcast where we get nerdy but stay real about the world of operational technology.
Here we dig into the issues shaping modern manufacturing.
Let's talk OT.
Welcome to Talk OT to Me by Secomea. My name is Jesper Andersen. I'm the global director here for our customer success professional services team, and I have 10 years experience in the cybersecurity world. Good to see you, Justin. Welcome to a talk about OT versus IT. It's going to be an interesting one here.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, it's good to see you again. I enjoyed chatting last time. When we ended, I thought, oh wait, I have a lot more to say. So I'm glad we're gonna keep talking. Friends or frenemies is definitely an issue that we need to talk about. But let me introduce myself for our audience. My name's Justin Powell. I'm a senior cybersecurity cybersecurity engineer here at Secomea. I've been in cybersecurity since, well, I had hair when I started, so it's been quite a long time. And I was just trying to figure it out the other day. I've been in OT cybersecurity for about 12 years, and I think today I'll tell the story on how I got pulled into this 12 years ago with one of my customers. So thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, good to see you again. Now you teed up the story. Now we got to hear it.
Yeah. So, and I think this is a story that'll be common if you're either side, IT or OT. And let me back up. I know we defined terms last time, but just real quick, IT, everybody pretty much knows what that is. But when we're saying OT cybersecurity, we're talking about cybersecurity of maybe critical infrastructure, manufacturing, the types of systems that produce things that actually integrate with the physical world. So pumps, motors, those sort of things, just so we're all clear on the terms. So about 12 years ago, maybe 13, geez, I'm getting old. I had a customer that was an IT cybersecurity customer of mine. They were, I don't know if they still are, the largest manufacturer of gypsum wallboard, which goes, I don't know what their brand name was, but people in the US would call that sheetrock. That's one of the brand names, but the largest one in North America, I believe. And my customer was the VP of IT. We were just doing a sales call at the time. And again, I'm not a salesperson, but I go with our salespeople to make sure that they don't say things that are insane and they say things that are technically correct. And this was not with Secomea. It was many companies ago for me. And we walked in and we were talking to him and he said, hey, we asked him, well, what's going on? What can we do? He's like, I have a problem. Like, great. Okay. Let me know what the problem is. He's like, well, I've been asked by our CEO to go figure out what's going on with this plant that is now down. And I'm like, okay, that seems pretty common. He's like, no, I don't know anything about our plants. I'm like, wait, hold on. You're the VP of IT, but you don't know anything about the systems of the plants that produce all of your revenue. And he was a friend of mine, so I could be a little blunt. And he's like, no, we don't touch that. That's not us. I think he called it ICS, Industrial Control Systems. He's like, that I don't know anything about it. I was like, okay, so walk me through what's happening here. And he's like, well, from what I understand, we have a plant that's gone down. And I'm like, okay, tell me what that means. Like, quantify that for me. He's like, well, for every hour that plant is down during normal production hours, it's between $40,000 and $65,000 in losses to the company. So do the math on one day down, you're talking serious money, which is why the CEO went to him and said, hey, I need your help. He's like, I don't know how to help you. And I was like, okay, walk me through it some more. He's like, well, I sent my guy out there. There are 2 old Windows machines. And by old, I mean like before Windows XP, like this is quite a long time ago. Right. And he's like, there used to be 2 from what I found out. And he's like, one of them went down about 5 years ago, but they had a second one. So they didn't worry about it. and this one now went down. He's like, I don't know what these machines even do. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk through this. What does it look like? What systems does it control? He's like, I have no idea. It's like, okay, what's the role of that device in the factory? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, what's your plan? And he's like, I have no idea. So again, 12 years ago, I'm the guy going, oh yeah, we can help you. I didn't know the difference of IT versus OT back then. Like I knew the IT side very well, but OT was new to me. So I went back and did a bunch of research and brought in a bunch of my other engineers on our team who were like, yeah, Justin, you need to be careful with this one because OT is different. I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, IT, we all get that, website goes down or maybe your payment system goes down or your email goes down, right? Something breaks and you don't get email. That's not great, but it's not the end of the world. But these OT systems, if they go down, again, it's tons of money for the company. And then there's potential loss of life that can be involved in that manufacturing process. So it's critical to those organizations. So I say all that to say that started me on this journey of realizing that at least back then, and to a certain extent still today, it's better. It's definitely better than it was 12 years ago. But there were sort of two camps or two knowledge bases, right? There's the OT guys that knew how to run factories, that knew how to run PLCs. They knew how to make, I had another customer, they knew how to make concrete. They knew how to make gypsum wallboard. They know how to can food, whatever it is. But when it came to, hey, do you have high availability of servers with backups and, some cybersecurity protocols on those servers? They're like, we don't do that. And so two different worlds, right? Which is why I'm excited about having this conversation, because that was my intro to the fact that these people are very different people. They speak different languages. They have different things that they care about. But that also introduced me into this thing that has become my passion, which is securing this physical infrastructure, this OT infrastructure, operational technology infrastructure. It's critical to literally to everything we do as an organization, but also as a country. Sorry. So that's my story. That's how I got into all this.
That's a nice story. That's a nice story. And then you were off to the races.
Yeah.
With OT security. Yeah. From the
from
IT
that
side
to, I live here in Texas. And so that quickly became oil and gas and pipelines,
of course.
And
yes.
electric production, electric distribution, water distribution, manufacturing, tons of things. Oddly enough, almost all of them struggled with especially 10 years ago, all of them struggled with this unclear line of authority and or even just responsibility between OT and IT or plant management and corporate IT.
Yeah.
And, one's talking about the OSI model, one's talking Purdue model. Somebody says levels, somebody says layers, and they're like, no, you mean layer 4. And they're like, no, I mean level 3. And you're like, what? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Yes, it is. There is a bit of a gap going from IT into OT in terms of terminology, understanding protocols and why it's different, and what is the same overlapping points. There is quite a way to get started. I also came from more of the IT side on security, and then into first of all, I think it's very interesting. Like you said, it's hard to not get gripped by the impact of what you sit with it, what you work with, the overall part we play in society, the manufacturing play in the society, and then you're protecting that, helping to make sure that's secure. The impact if something goes wrong is hard to get really not head your head around. And then also for me, I think like the part that it's so complicated sometimes. And the reason it's so complicated is you have like the greenfield plant that you just built that has all the wells and business, and then you had a plant in the same company that nobody has taught since the 90s, and nobody's just leaving it there because if you remove that PC somewhere and nobody knows where it is, then things falls apart and you have to straddle both wells.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny over the years in trying to solve these issues, I used to joke with our internal engineers and sometimes with our customers if I had a good relationship, is that I wasn't really an engineer, I was a marriage counselor. And I think I mentioned that in our last podcast, but let me expand on that a little bit. Literally, these were two different people, OT guy, mechanical engineer, IT guy, systems engineer, that wanted the same thing. They wanted safe operation, they wanted uptime, they wanted security, they wanted whatever, but they were speaking two different languages that made one of them not trust the other one. So when an IT guy would talk to an OT guy and say, hey, I want to come scan your network, the OT guy's like, all right, I'm out. See you later. We're not doing this. And because, just to clarify what I mean by that is, some IT scanning tools can be really overly aggressive when it relates to OT networks. And a lot of OT systems don't have the same fault tolerance, the same fault controls that you would see on an IT network. So if you do a certain type of scan, the device might just freak out and shut down, right? And OT guys are like, nope, not going to happen. Where the IT guy's like, why are you such a jerk to me? Well, I'm just trying to do my job, right? So then you'd have to sit down with the OT guy and go, he doesn't mean that he wants to break everything. He says, I know that's what it sounds like to you, but what he meant was he wants to make you more secure. And the OT guy would go, okay, I'm open to that conversation. And then I'd have to go back to the IT guy and go, hey, you know what? When you said scan, you really hurt his feelings. And he's like, what? I don't understand. I'm like, I know. Let me explain to you fault tolerance, all this other stuff. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because he didn't have OT experience.
Yeah.
And so honestly, in the first 5 years of doing it. Again, 12, maybe, but half the time. So 6 years out of the 12 I've been doing this. Literally, it's just trying to bridge that language gap and that understanding of intention. And there's a huge educational element that had to be done on both sides that I think we made a long way. Again, depends on the industry. Some are further ahead than others. Some companies are ahead of others. And oddly enough, it's not always by size. I've had some very large companies that were hopelessly behind and some very small companies that really understood it. And it really came down to the people, right? Do they have people that understand what the goal is here? So when I say I'm a marriage counselor to the cybersecurity industry, that's what I mean.
Yeah, because you think it actually, I've thought a lot about this. Is this a tooling problem? Is this a technology problem? Or is it actually a leadership people problem, marriage problem? Rather than it is actually a yes, there are some differences on the protocols and the underlying infrastructure it runs on. But in general, do you think it's more of that sometimes I think we get, because we IT, we love technology, we are engineers, we get bogged down in all that part of it. But actually, is it more of a marriage counseling, listening, leadership problem than it is a technology problem?
Hey, that's a great question. One that I've thought about a lot. Being an engineer, obviously, my first answer is always going to be, "Oh, it's a technology problem. Oh, we got to fix it with better technology."
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's the right answer. Although there definitely are technological gaps within the systems that need to be filled. But I don't think that was not at the beginning the primary problem at all. And it still isn't in a lot of cases. I think, at least in the United States, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the European market and global markets, but here in North America, it's a scarcity of talent problem. And what I mean by that is you take this guy that I was talking about, who's the VP of IT. He doesn't know anything about OT, but now he's in charge of OT. Now that was 12 years ago. I saw that last year, right? That's still happening because the old phrase, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? If you know anything about cybersecurity, oftentimes you might be with an organization that says, "Hey, go figure it out."
Yeah.
Hey, you're in charge of this. Go figure it out. And oftentimes I see guys, women, men, people in charge or put in charge of cybersecurity of OT that maybe don't have the range of experience that they probably should have, but there's nobody else. That's not intentional. It's not like he's not good at his job. He's very good at his job. And they're asked to do something else. And then that gets to what you talked about. Then you have to have leadership. Then you have to have controls. Then you have to have compliance standards. Then you have to have technology to meet those standards. And that whole part of this world being OT cybersecurity, has really started to develop in the last, call it 5 years, give or take.
Yeah.
A little longer depending on the organization, but
yeah, because I think a lot of times, yes, there are definitely technology differences, but it's also sometimes a listening and curiosity problem. The IT guy that comes in to this environment, how does he approach it? Because you do have the underlying understanding of technology, of computers, PC, networks, and whatever. So he does have some sort of framework. I think a lot of times I think the problem is actually the relying on your pre-existing knowledge and not being curious. You're stepping into a new world. Yes, you have some framework, but you need to make sure you understand what is actually happening here. For example, like to the scanner a problem for a long time, and now we have a technology solution for it. We have much gentler scanning tools out there that understands where that is in an OT environment and can maybe fit with maintenance windows and doesn't overload them and do a lot more passive than active scanning. So it was a problem we could solve, but it's also about, I'm an IT guy coming into this environment. I need to be open. I need to be understanding. I need to ask questions. I have the framework. I can't assume that, hey, this is what I usually do. I need to sort of listen.
Yeah, good point.
Make an assumption, put it on the table, and then get verified in it. Because I also came from the other side of the pond, and it took me a while. But if you're really opening and listening to it, so I also think it's a very much a people problem. And it's an understanding of, you maybe come from a world where you understand everything, but now you need to be opening and listening to what your counterpart is saying, to learn and make sure you really understand this before you take the other steps and not have so many assumptions into it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And you mentioned earlier a tool problem. As an engineer, IT or OT, we're used to solving problems in a certain way, right? And for an IT cybersecurity engineer, if you're trying to secure an endpoint, you're going to put some sort of endpoint security software on that device, right? Prevents ransomware, malware, it's a million things that it can do. And so they walk in with that as their, and this is still true today, with that as sort of the, hey, that's what we need to do. But how are you going to do that on an RTU or a PLC, some that are 25 years old, right?
Yeah.
There are some Windows machines out there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But there are environments that are designed to last, significantly longer than an IT environment, that don't have the compute or whatever is required for those sort of agents, those sort of things. And so, again, the old phrase, when you only have a hammer, everything's a nail. I think there's a little bit of that happened as this convergence, OT-IT convergence, has started and continues.
Yeah. But I also think now we're seeing it from the IT perspective, but there's also something about from the OT perspective of the IT guy coming in and saying, hey, that the OT people just as much need to listen and be interested in OT, because there is a lot of the standards and how we do stuff in IT that needs to be applied to OT to get them to the right level. It just have to have the right fit for us. So you also, as an OT guy, needs to listen to your IT colleagues when they talk about how to deal with users, for example, or AD, or there's a bunch of stuff where they're much further along than the majority of OT is, and where you are uptime thinking, you don't, where you because a lot of times I think like we're coming in and saying, oh yeah, uptime is everything, and it still is in OT, but that OT people also needs to take a step back and says, okay, if I want my uptime, security is important, because if I first get a break, so how do I square those two and get both here? And what can I learn from my IT counterpart that I need to learn in my environment? Just say, hey, it doesn't fit here. But so it's really the frenemy part comes from both sides, I think, and it really is a listening problem.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. Which we as engineers probably aren't great at listening. Sometimes that's not our strong point. So we have to be honest with ourselves. So I like that idea. So let me go back, because I was thinking about this and I meant to bring it up on our last podcast. But one of the things that I've seen is that as these two sides talk more, the IT guy goes, okay, well, we need to put in a firewall between your network and the internet. And then we'll put in a VPN into the OT side of the network, and then we're all good, right? What are your thoughts on that? Is that an appropriate way to bridge the gap, or?
Yeah, and again, not at all, because what they're probably going to come with is hey, I have an IT firewall and I have an IT VPN, which just isn't going to cut it for the security and the way you operate in there. Because what's going to happen is you're going to let out the majority of coming into a plant often comes from the outside. And there are a few people on there that goes to the local network out, but everybody else is coming in outside. And you need to then think about, okay, what is it that are actually coming in? Most IT environments, people that come into the into the IT environment isn't that big, but in an OT setting, it can be the majority. In plants that we visited, it's 99% of all things coming in from the internet comes via somebody else. And there you need much better security around it.
For sure. So what is that? So we've established that there's this not conflict, but tension between these two groups.
Yeah.
That the tool set maybe isn't always great. So what are some examples of things where you've seen organizations overcome that? How did they overcome it?
What I've seen so far, and I have, and again, like I spend a lot of time meeting with the global manufacturing organization. That's basically my job. And one thing I can see is that what sets them apart is the leadership around it. It's not how they approach it, it's not their process. It's that they have a CISO that really understands that I need to build out a team here, that I need to bridge that gap, and really and is strategically in building it out. And then and he's also strategic in helping his people build these relationships with each other over time. So IT builds relationship in OT and on the plant side of things, and also that the OT guys get told, hey, go talk to the AD guy over there. Spend some time with him. He runs our AD setup, our groups of users. Go make sure you build a relationship with them. Or there is this operational center. Make sure you go spend time with those guys so that you really strategically, as a CISO, cross-pollinize it. And then I think it is a leadership task where I think about it is like, how do you make sure you build trust between them? So how do you make sure, like exactly, because the OC guy is going to have this experience of him coming in, or this either in his current job or over time and like, okay, how do you, that somebody crashed his network. So how do you make sure they build trust? Okay, now you're starting to build trust. You're strategic around the relationships building. How do you resolve conflict within them? When one comes and say, hey, I want a VPN. This is the right solution. We're buying this VPN. We're using it for remote access everywhere. How do you make sure those teams have a good resolution of conflict, so they can build on? And then what I've seen work really well is when they then get to the common goal. And the common goal isn't just, we need to be as secure as possible. It has to be an understanding of what is uptime on both sides. Why is this important here? So they get the common goal and they're committed to something together long term. And that's both the security part, but that's also the operational part. Like, I think in general, cybersecurity needs to be focused on being the business enabler. Security only makes sense in the space where we actually protect something that has value. Security for security's sake doesn't drive anything. So I need to make sure that the team has those common goals, like this is the security we want, what is the business outcome that we're hunting, so they really know where they are and they're sort of focused on the same thing. And from my perspective, you spend more time in the technical world than I do, and I spend more time in the how do we get this implemented? How do we get this up and running? How do we get this to work? And what I really see is the chief technology officers that you meet out there that are strategic in thinking about how they build their team, how they integrate their team, really have a big advantage. And then comes the tooling question afterwards. Then you have to discuss, like in this discussion about, do you have two different ADs? But I think if you don't have the underlying trust between the team, that they try to understand each other, that they know how to resolve this conflict, so both parties doesn't go in sort of half spoiling for a fight because they don't have the experience that they can actually solve these fights. That is always, you get your way, I won't get the other way. But like, how do you resolve these conflicts? And if they don't have a common understanding of where they're going, then it becomes really hard. So I think this frenemy OT IT, I think I'm much more about what I've experienced working with in the real world is that it is really a leadership problem, a personnel problem. And then there are some tooling problems too. But if you don't have that underlying team build out, you're not going to, no amount of tooling is going to solve it. Actually, I think more tooling might actually make it worse for you guys than the other way around. I don't know. How do you think about that as the engineer in your room?
I think you're exactly correct. And I will give you an example of the negative side of that, or what it looks like when a company doesn't do that well, because I think it is a leadership decision. But just a few months ago, I got a call from a customer, a large pharmaceutical company, and they're like, we have a problem. Like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, we've always used so-and-so VPN for remote access for third parties in our plants. And our IT team just told us we can't do it anymore. And they turned them off. So no remote access, not through the VPN. And they had, honestly, the IT team had good reasons, right? There was not much segmentation of the networks. It was very flat. There was no control of lateral movement, device control, all those sort of things. It wasn't a well-considered solution for what they were using it for. But that doesn't mean that the IT guy gets to just walk in and go, I'm going to turn this off, right?
Yeah.
Because it affected the operations of, hey, so they had to come up, we had to design a solution like in a month, which was a very large organization that was moving the ball very fast to help them at least get back to some semblance of normal operations. And again, we developed a good solution, very secure. It was the right thing for them. But the problem wasn't the technology, to your point. The problem was the leadership decision, or more importantly, the I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to do what I want, and I trump you, I win.
Yes.
That's the problem. I mean, not always, but in that case, absolutely was a real world problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also my experience a lot of the times, especially with security teams. I think in general, as a security team, you need to really be focused on understanding enablement, because this goes forever. If you go down and turn off, even in your office environment, you turn out the phone so they can't do the things, take a snapshot or something, there might be good reasons for it. But if you do it without telling your users, without having a dialogue and talking about change management with it, then you're going to have a really hard time implementing your security standards that you want. And I think cybersecurity, for the most part, doesn't really focus that much on users and outcome. It's a server running in the background. It's a program running in the background. There are 4 or 5 users, that's it. And most people will never notice this. So when OT sort of steps out of that environment, which they will when they go into an OT environment, because there's a bunch of production directors and VP of region that's going to care a lot about what you do. When you step out of that, this is just your own contain. You can nerd all you want. There are 5 users there. You really need to think about what is the change management. And that goes from everybody. But it's just in IT, it's the majority of the tools you're still using for securing your IT environment doesn't have that much of an impact on user. We largely sort of made the PC environment that a normal office worker is working on. The security most of the time runs in the background. And if there is an annoyance, it's changing the password or something else like that. That's all the impact you're having on the user. And then you step into the OT, and now the impact is production, VP of APAC calling you and shouting at you and saying, what did you do? And so you really need to sort of change your mindset a little bit, because it's not the same. It's not the same outcome you're getting there. Like IT is much more shadowed. The impact of shutting down a few users, not that much. OT, the impact is now huge, and the scale of conflict that you get there is much larger than if you bother a team or a few office workers, or even your whole office that they need to do a little bit of a change. They need to change their password. But in OT, the escalation path to that is right to the CEO, and the next level is the board. You don't have a lot of those in the IT environment where it goes direct to the board. Straight up 1-2 step, and you're at the CEO, and a step more you're at the board level, because now the impact is huge, and the impact on profit are huge. So you have to really, really think about how you approach this.
Yeah, you just made me think of something. So, I just gave an example of an IT side doing something not great. I've had another customer who I won't name, but the OT guys were very resistant because of what you just mentioned. They were very resistant to any IT integration into their systems because they didn't understand, again, not their job. Their job was to produce a widget, but they didn't understand how IT, let's just talk about network visibility and monitoring, how that was important to the IT team, which was also important to the board, because they needed that visibility to be able to manage and deal with risk, functionally risk mitigation. But the OT guy's like, I don't care about any of that. And so you kind of had to sit down and go, I know you don't. Like, I know you don't care about log files. I know you don't care about session recording. I know you don't, like, that's not your world, but that's this guy's world. And let me show you why, right? Normally because it's regulatory compliance, or they failed some sort of audit and now they have to do this. And the OT guy's like, yeah, we've never done it before. And the IT guy's like, yeah, that's why we failed the audit.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that. And that's not just network visibility monitoring. It can be secure remote access. It can be vulnerability management, incident response. There's a million things that SANS would tell you are the critical controls you have to have in place to secure an OT network, really any network. And so again, it's leadership on both sides. It's the OT, like the IT guy can't be the 900-pound gorilla going, we're going to do it our way. But there are times where they have to come in and go, no, there's a reason the board is making us do this, but let me explain it to you. Let me get your buy-in. You might not like it. That's okay. You don't have to like it, but here are the reasons we have to do it. That's, again, that friends versus frenemies thing can come from that.
Yeah. Bring him along, the OT guy, saying, okay, you have to do this, but then, okay, help me explain to me, how do we roll this out to you? What is the impact? What's the risk that you see? Let's talk through it so we don't overdo it, that we find a path to getting you there, to understand where you're going and what can be the impact of doing this. Okay, then let's take it together and make sure the organization gets to the outcome that they want to get to.
Yeah, perfect example of things both sides want, but understand differently. You mentioned, AD integration or single sign-on or user creation, user management, whatever we want to call that area of the world. Well, on the on the IT side, that might take a day, couple days, put in a ticket. There's 24-hour mean time to response, 48-hour mean time to resolution, whatever. But let's say it's 48 hours.
Yes.
Well, if a plant manager is like, the plant is down, I need this third-party manufacturing representative to have access to repair this remotely today, because he's in Detroit and the plant's in Brazil. How do you handle that workflow process? And I think that's a critical part. And again, I'm just using user management as an example, but that's a part where the OT guy's like, no, this should be easy. I need to press a button. It needs to be done in 5 minutes. And the IT guy's like, no, here's our process. Here's our ticketing system. Here are our expectations. And so that creates tension for sure.
Yeah. And I think this is where this all comes back to, and this is where I think the tooling comes in to it. It's also the vendors like ourselves. When we design a project, we have this internal thing where we call bill for OT approved by IT. And this is where the tooling needs to make sure that they can bridge the gap between, you need to be able to get this vendor in now. You're standing there, it's millions of dollars you're pouring out every hour. It has to be able to manage that, but it also has to make sure that it fits into the security flow, of course, but that it also fits into the rest of the IT architecture there. So how do you integrate with your AD, audit logs, so you can do monitoring? All of those things. I think as a vendor, we also have a very big responsibility in bridging this gap by making a system that, yes, is built for OT, but that IT can also live with and it fits into this IT infrastructure. So I think when it becomes a tooling problem, it's also a lot about how the vendor that you're buying that from, how do they view the world? They also need to have their eyes and ears open, understand both sides of it, make sure that they bridge it, make sure that it fits into an overall technology strategy that the top chief information officer or whatever you have sitting at the top, how does it fit into that? It can't stand alone on its own. It needs to fit into the broader part.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, I bring this up every time I talk to customers, the idea of audit logs, right? So I just gave an example of, all right, there's a factory in, I don't know what I said. I think the company's in Detroit, the factory's in Brazil. You need somebody to log in. Well, are you tracking who logged in?
Yeah.
How did they log in? What protocol did they use?
Yes.
What did they access? What did they change? Did they use a secure communication protocol? There's a million things that you want to track. The OT guy goes, yeah, I don't care. I want the factory up. But the IT side says, no. I know we want the factory up too.
Yeah.
We want to give you the ability to create that user or do a workflow, an exception workflow management process so that it's faster. But we still need to track these things and it needs to feed into the system, because what if there is an incident, right? Well, the IT team has an incident response plan that requires that they do X, Y, Z, and that for a good solution, you've got to consider those things, whether we're talking about secure remote access or network monitoring or installation of new equipment or any of those things.
Yes. And I think also this goes into you have to think about it again in a broader, because if you're not shipping those audit log to their SOC team, then they also don't see the full picture of a possible attack. You have somebody probing here, you have somebody probing there. You need to be able to see the full size of it, and so it needs to fit into this IT. So Justin, OT, IT, frenemy or friends, or
a long time ago it was full on enemies.
Yes.
I think it's moved to frenemies, and I think we're getting towards friends that can, maybe not quite friends.
Yeah.
Colleagues that can put up with each other, and hopefully we'll get to friends here soon.
Yeah. I think also we're moving closely to friends. Give it a couple more years. I think we're definitely going to get there. So I'm very hopeful on this topic. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think a lot of smart, both vendors and producing technology, but also CISOs that thinks more strategic about how they build teams and get the right people in place are moving us slowly in the right direction.
For sure. And let me, if you don't mind, let me make a plea here. If you guys are hearing our voice and you aren't having these conversations internally and you're not trying to solve these gaps in OT systems, you are critically in danger, right? We went over some statistics in our first podcast, but manufacturing space is the largest space for cybersecurity breaches. Like a quarter of all attacks are on the manufacturing side. And again, it's not just manufacturing, it's the whole critical infrastructure. We as a community of thought leaders that care about this stuff have got to start having these hard conversations, whether it's with us, whether it's somebody else, whether it's internal, I don't care. But we've got to get beyond the politics of this and get to secure overall critical infrastructure. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, that's perfect. Always great to talk to you, Justin.
Absolutely.
See you next time for the next topic. Have a nice day, and thank you so much for your input.
Looking forward to it. Have a great evening.
Thank you for listening to Talk OT to Me.